What's up, everybody? Happy St. Patrick's Day, even though you'll be listening to this in April. But I'm here for it. If you guys don't know me, the people that do know me, I'm very, very, very festive. This is not even as festive as I usually dress up. Usually I have like a boa on, that's green, a tutu, and everything like that. But anyways, welcome to Free Lady. I'm your host, Brittany McQuethy, and this is my beautiful friend, Michele Robbins. I'm so excited to have her on my channel today. She's just such a wonderful soul. We got to meet at the women's event through our coaching group, the Lion's Den, and it had just became a really beautiful relationship since then. So again, this channel is for you to find your community. Finding your community is really important if you are struggling. Doesn't mean you have to go talk to this person or this person. I am not a professional therapist, but I am here to share my story and other people's stories for you to feel like you are not alone. If you are in need of help, please reach out to a professional, or we can guide you to a professional person that will work for you, of course. So, Michele, what are we grateful for today?
Oh my gosh, I am grateful for your cool little hair stuff. That is just so much fun. And I am very disappointed there is no boa. Now that I know that boa was an option, like, where's the boa? Like, you're holding out on me, I swear.
I know.
Who does that? Who does that? But I'm grateful
next time
for several things.
Good.
Yeah. I'm grateful for several things. I was really thinking a lot today about that before the call or the podcast of what I'm grateful for. And there's just been so many things that have just come across my heart lately. And I would just say, first and foremost, being alive and being able to be on this journey and experience all these things is one of them. The other thing that I'm very grateful for is the network, like you were saying, having this network, having relationships with you.
Yeah.
I went to the women's meetup in October where I met you. And the reason I went was because I knew that I had decided that I wanted to have powerful relationships with other women. And I grew up thinking that was this, that, they're just out to get you. They're going to stab you in the back. And I decided that I was recreating that mentality and that momentum in my life so that I can empower others and, love others. And of course, as we all want to be loved back in return.
That's so good. That's so good. I love, and let me just point that out that you said you decided, right? And I want to make that clear to everybody that like you have an opportunity to always decide what you want to do. And it's funny because right before this call, Michele and I were talking about St. Patrick's Day and how we used to like, plan like where we're going to drink all day. Oh, is there a ghost in there? Where are we going to drink all day? And how our lives are not like that anymore. I mean, I'm sure it still would be fun to go out and be like festive, but it's not like about getting drunk, it's about just, being around celebrating and stuff like that. And how, we get to decide where we're going, like when we go out or when we do things. And so I just love that. I love that you express that. That's really, really cool. So Michele, what do you do? Who are you?
So I am Michele Robbins, and I wear so many hats. And I think most of your audience can probably relate to that. I wear the hat of a wife. I wear the hat of a mother of 4 and 2 bonus daughters. I wear the hat of a realtor for 22 years, but I'm also the owner and broker. And now I also have my license, not only, and we have really just kind of taken the bull by the horns recently, and we can talk about that more. But we started a Turo business last year, so we have 2 vehicles on our Turo business that we do intend
Oh,
to continue
yeah.
to grow. We're still figuring out all the kinks of that.
Yeah.
It was funny because we talked to Sean Whalen about it. He's like, that's a great idea. And you know how Sean is. And so I was like, whoa, I didn't realize it was that great of an idea. Maybe it is.
Yeah.
So sometimes you have a great idea and you don't give yourself enough credit, tackle that goal.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we started, my husband's dream was to start an apparel company. So
Right.
we also started an apparel company. And so that started, and we're working out the kinks and learning so much, and
Right.
really grasping all the support that we're getting and the love from other people that are in and around us, so that we can just continue to grow that journey as well.
That is amazing. And I don't think it's like a bad thing to have, wear a lot of hats, right? Like sometimes people say like, oh, you shouldn't be a jack of all trades. You really need to be a master. Well, I can work on something and be a master, still be a master at something and learn how to be a master at something else. Like that's how we grow into different things and have communities. And and then you're looking at like how you reach out to different types of people and different
Yeah.
communities and
So
stuff.
I think too that once you master, yeah, I think too that once you master something, or at least you get something, like for me, real estate, that's kind of easy. That's almost second nature to me now.
Right.
That's our bread and butter.
Right.
I've been doing that for so long that I teach and, mentor other people in doing what I do.
Mhm.
And I found that I love teaching and supporting others and doing it as well. And so for me, okay, great. I've already got this. Like I've already tackled this. And then it's like, well, what else can I do? What else is next? And that's just
Right.
really when it gets to be fun, because I never now I think about, I love that I can do real estate and it's my passion and it's my drive, but I can also discover and like dabble and figure out what else I love, because
Yeah.
I feel like I have so much more to offer.
Yeah. And I think you do. I think you are like, I see you all the time, real estate, and and your apparel company. It's in my face all the time on social media. And I love that. So you are adding value every day. And like, I think, just seeing you work that hard is, something to look up to for anybody. Like, all you got to do is add value every day and you're going to be like successful because you're passionate. And I think it's great to venture out into different things to see what else you're passionate about, because it just grows a new seed. You're just planting more seeds and letting those things grow, and you grow yourself as a person. And I just think it's wonderful. I think it's really good. So I know we talked about a little bit your history, your background history as you recently met the man of your dreams and you're married to this wonderful man, but it wasn't like that always, right? And so um talk about that, Michelle. Like you used to not be in the right relationship, which is okay, right? This is how we grow and we learn.
Right.
Um, but how did you come out of like discovering that, hey, this is not working for me and I need to grow for myself and learn to love myself and be in better relationships?
Oh gosh. I I get really emotional about it when I really like dig deep
Yeah.
on some of this stuff, because I know that I'm not alone. And the more that I talk about it, I realize how many other people are experiencing similar or almost the same
Mhm.
situations. And I think that the whole thing started when we were really young, just 19 years old. And, back then, kind of like the whole St. Patrick's Day, our mindsets were like, oh, well, you're cute, you're cute. Okay. Or you're captain of the football team. Oh, you're, cheerleader and you look like a Barbie doll. And so, they called us Ken and Barbie. And it was just like, oh, how cute,
Yeah.
and in that immature mindset, we're like, well, this is great. We can party and we do all this. And
Mhm. Mhm.
and that mindset versus foundational things, because we didn't even know who we were. We were
Right.
still trying to discover who we were, right? Um, and I really feel grateful when I see someone who starts that young and they are still together and they're happier and stronger, better than ever. You know, like Scott and Ann Travis, they're just like, you're like, you've been together that long and you still are just absolutely passionately in love with each other. And like, that is so awesome. I envy that.
Yeah.
But that was not the case for me. And I know that's not the case for a lot of women
Right.
and even some men, where you go through a very traumatic time, or a series even of traumatic times where I think that a lot of guilt also, you know, your immaturity of your mindset, but there's also that guilt.
Yeah.
When we were first together, everything was, you know, the honeymoon period and everything was great. And, you
Yeah.
know, this, how could this go bad, you
Right.
know? And
Totally.
then we get we get pregnant, you know, ended up having our daughter, but we split up after we found out I was pregnant. He left. He was like, I'm out of here, and you know, let me know what you want to do. And I'm like, yeah, I'll let you know what I want to do. And then, you know, then it turns nasty, and then, you know, comes full circle, that we end up going, gosh, you know, we really don't want that. We don't want that. We were just angry and hurt and scared. And so we moved forward with our relationship and had our daughter. And it went from, you know, good to horrible to good to horrible. And that ended up being the story throughout our relationship. It was
Right.
always this roller coaster. It was
Right.
either really good or really bad. it
Right.
it was never in between. And you
Right.
know, I never felt like I was coasting, like
Right.
some people say, oh, I was coasting, you know, we'll just make it through this. It was always, highs were high, the lows were low. There was a ton of abuse.
Yeah.
And in that immature mindset that I know I had, looking back, I realized how much of that I took from my father, who would be very
Huh.
uh, mentally and emotionally abusive.
Right.
So I was just mimicking what I was, and I kept looking deep inside myself, going, "How did I do this?" Yet I was not. I wasn't. I
Hey. Hi.
wasn't mature enough to understand.
Yeah.
Who's the special guest?
Oh, my uncle. He's like, I brought you some sushi. I was like, really? Okay. Yeah. That was my like first
So
introduction in the interview, but that's cute.
yeah, I mean, I see your eyes light up. So it definitely, I was like, it's either a really, since it's not green beer, but
Yeah. No, my uncle's like one of my best friends. Like, I mean, he's an amazing man. So I'm glad I have him in my life. But yeah, I mean, I definitely understand, like, you know, when you are brought up in like verbal abuse, like that is, I mean, you might get physically abused in your life, you know, that does happen. And there's a lot of women out there that are experiencing what you used to experience, you know, that's why it's so important to share these stories. But it's also like we make these agreements in our mind subconsciously that that's the right way to be treated, and then we grow up and we get into that same relationship, even though it didn't make us feel good when we were younger, but that's what we're used to. It's so interesting. So that's
mhm.
what you were going through
And
this.
then you're, yeah. And then you go to the place where I was raised very hardcore Lutheran, which is very similar to like a Catholic or a Mormon, just very hardcore, that you do certain things and you don't do certain things. And we already were against the grain because we had a child
Yeah.
out of wedlock, and because we weren't, you're getting all these attacks on
Right.
you to do the right thing.
Right.
And I got to a point where I ended up going and saying, I can't take this. I don't know the answers. And we were not together at that point, and Brooke was little. And so to get away from him and try to get clarity and figure out who I wanted to be when I grew up, because I was still just so young. I was 21 years old by the time I had my daughter, and I'm having a baby, or I just had a baby. So I moved up to Prescott, Arizona to go to college and try to restart my life and just get away. But I couldn't go too far because he still had rights to spend with her.
Right.
And so basically it was that back and forth, and that didn't help anything either. So I ended up moving back because it just wasn't fair to all of us
Right.
that my running away to get away from that wasn't really helping. So I
Right.
did that, and then I moved back to what we call the Valley here in Arizona. And I got a good job. I was doing good. I was a single mom. I'm like, I'm rocking this stuff. I'm like, okay, I'm good. I don't need him. He can visit her and we're great. And then we had a one night hookup and I get pregnant. I'm like, mother of God. Yeah. Long story short, then we have two kids.
Right.
Right. And so we went through that whole thing of what do we do now? And
Right.
so we ended up getting together after our son was born. We get married. And I was just like, I still remember to this day, and maybe some of the ladies in your audience can like relate to this, is I remember being happy that we were getting married because I was doing what I was supposed to do to make my family whole.
Right.
I was de-bastardizing my children, right? I
Mhm.
was like somehow making two wrongs into a right by
Mhm.
getting married to the father of the children. And did I love him? Yes, there was a part of me that loved him,
Of course.
but not for the right reasons. I still like was just very immature and not fully mature in what love really was and what it looked like and what it meant to me.
Right.
So the abuse never really stopped. It just would go in phases where it was highs and lows, still that roller
Mhm. Mhm.
coaster. So um it we got married, and then we ended up breaking up again shortly after that, and separating, if you will.
Mhm.
And then we get back together, and we did this so many times that to the point where our family and our friends didn't even know which way was coming and going, because it was 3 weeks on, 3 weeks off, 3 weeks on, 3 weeks off, and it was so consistent. And the abuse, like I didn't even tell people about it anymore. I just went numb and I got quiet and I just dealt with it until I blew up. And then there was a big fight, and then he
Right.
was, gone, or like the cops would get called. And, but then I was the bad person because I had taken it,
Of
taken out like all my aggression and anger that had built up. And so moving forward, we ended up splitting up again. And then we ended up getting pregnant again. Denominator here, looking at self, going, I'm finally getting to that maturity spot in my
Right.
life after having two kids and a third one on the
Right.
way. I'm like, the common denominator here is me, right? I
Sure.
mean, I could point the finger at him
Absolutely.
because definitely he played his part.
Right.
But what is it about me that I'm doing? What is it about me that I'm not doing? What
Right.
is it about me? What do I really want? And so I went, to so far as to wrote this list out, and then I typed it all up and I emailed it to him because he
Ah,
wanted to get back together so we could have
right.
our what ended up being our. And I was just like, this is ludicrous. I want all these things, whether it's you
Mhm.
or not.
Right.
This is what I want in a relationship. This
Right.
is what I'll accept. Here's my non-negotiables. I really felt empowered, like I was doing something good. And it's funny because he responded back to me that, well, I want all the same things you
Of course he said that.
do. No, we haven't. Clearly, it's been years. Like, what's going on?
Right.
So, because we had baby number 3 on the way, we decided that we were going to give it another go round, right? We're like, okay, we're going to do this.
Well,
And I
sometimes you
said,
never
look,
you never know sometimes, but I think
right,
it is really powerful what you did because I was thinking in my mind, like, how does one mature and know what love is, being young with 3 amazing kids, but the kids were a blessing, of course, but it's also like, I mean, you should be really proud of that moment, even though it might have took longer to get there, but be proud of, like that moment of like, hey, like this is on me too. And there's so many relationships out there that they just want to blame the other person for everything. It's
yep,
not just one person. It's the other person too because you are letting that happen. And so it's like,
mm-hmm,
okay, well, why am I letting that happen? And of course, like sometimes things might work out. People can change, but we can't change them. They have to want to be that person that loves themselves to love
right,
another the way that they deserve. So, I mean,
absolutely,
and you're young, it's like you have these 3 kids, like you want to try to make it work. Sometimes it's just for the kids. And we realize that like we don't need to be doing that for the kids. We need to make a beautiful, loving relationship, whether we're together or apart, for our kids and for ourselves.
right,
Yeah.
right.
So
That
third
couldn't
go
be more
around.
true.
Yeah. So you guys start
The
trying to third
third
go.
go round, and then we decided year of our life, our of our relationship was that year because we were very clear and very connected that we were going this direction and we both wanted the same things. And as long as we stayed on this path, that we had a chance of making it and that we could do right by our children.
Right.
And so we decided to have baby number 4 because things were going good.
Yeah.
And then they weren't. Baby number 4 arrives, which is my youngest, and started getting bad again. And the old habits, the old behaviors, everything started getting bad and even dangerous. There was times where it was scary. So we ended up. It got to the point where I remember I was telling Doug about this that the lies were so bad that I remember him coming home and telling me that he had a surprise for me. And what he really had for me was he had went and bought a house to try to get away from me and to make enough money so that he could get out on his own because he really didn't want to be with me anymore. But he knew that he couldn't pull it off without me because I was kind of the brains of the business doing
Yeah.
real estate. He
Yeah.
was he was kind of I had trained him and he was kind of the muscle and the person on the job while I was handling all the kids. And so he walks me into this, takes me to this house, and I'm sitting here pissed, right?
Yeah.
Going, okay, I know something's up because you're just acting funny and we've been fighting nonstop. And he takes me to this house and he's like, I bought this house for you to make everything up to you that we could figure everything out. And I was just like,
That's
you
manipulative.
yes, the manipulation was constant and it came to that head and I was like, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, like you've lied one too many times, you cheated, you've done all this, we're just I was not innocent by any means in any of that. I was not perfect, but I was just like, we're doing the same stuff, and how much longer are we going to do this and have our kids see this?
Right.
And
Right.
guilty or not, I got to the point where I'm like, I'm just going to have to burn it all to the ground because I cannot live like this. Like, I thought that maybe, like, when you're thinking to yourself, do I end my life, but I can't end my life because I can't trust that someone's going to take care of my kids? Like,
Mm.
that's how bad it was.
Oh
I
my.
was so fearful that I had to stay here for them
Mm.
because he wasn't so incompetent
Yeah.
and I didn't want anything bad to happen to them. So I
Right.
was like, well, I prayed and I was just like, I don't know the answers, but I just cannot keep living like this. So I got to the point where it's just like, okay, whatever. And I filed for divorce. And it wasn't, he gets the divorce paperwork. He's like, it's not the first time I've seen this, throwing this at me again, huh? And I'm like, okay. But this time I was really done. And I, we got divorced. I think it was like 4 or 5 months later, it finally went through. And then I thought, I thought that was the magic pill.
Right.
We're going to be divorced and that is going to make everything better.
Right.
And it didn't.
Mm.
It made it better for me mentally to go, okay, I don't legally have to do anything. I don't have to respond. I don't have to answer. I don't have to allow
Mhm.
certain things.
Yeah.
But then it started a whole new chapter
Yeah.
of, so what? Now what? What do
Right.
I so what? That all happened. Now what do I do as a single mom with 4 kids and one just recently diagnosed with autism, severe autism? And I was just like, okay, did I mess up?
Mm.
And that's the funny thing is when I thought to myself, did I mess up? I was like, no, because it wasn't ever going to get better.
Right. Right. But now, it is a new chapter because you're focusing on loving yourself. And that's a hard road to be on, to like
Oh yeah.
powerful as a feminine woman and like make sure your kids are okay, and having your daughter who has autism, she's so beautiful. Oh my, I love it when you post stuff about her. I mean, all your kids are so pretty, you
Thank you.
know. But that
I
is
can claim 50% credit.
yeah, yeah, of course, but then you have another part of that, which is your own identity. Like you said, loving yourself, being a single mom, and learning how to co-parent with this person. I'm sure that was something that was like, who knew how that was going to be, and how is that, like, and that's a journey. That's such a
Right.
journey.
Yeah. I remember my mother telling me that she was surprised that we finally got divorced, but she wasn't surprised because it was like I had 5 kids. Now I only have 4 because I literally had to do so much.
Right.
And I felt in order to, and I really was such a control freak because I couldn't trust him to do his part or what I wanted him to do or needed him to do. I couldn't trust him to be the man in the relationship. And so that leads to where we're at now. We can talk about that in a little bit, but literally that was my mindset, is like I had to make sure everything was in order. I had to constantly do everything. I had to make up for all the things that
Right.
weren't handled correctly or
Right.
handled at all. Um, I had to protect the kids from all the stupid stuff, that their father was doing that I knew about, but I didn't, I had to protect them. I had to shelter them, or
Mhm.
at least that's what I felt. That's what I made up that was the best thing for them. And so that's what I did. And I'm actually doing one of my coaching calls, and I called my son and I said, Blake, you know how mom's got her coaching group too? Oh, that's the other hat that I wear.
Yes.
I,
Yeah.
I started up my coaching and mentorship group, and I said, Blake, I would love for you to come and sit by my side and tell people what it was like and what you thought
Mm.
life was like
Mm.
growing up. What did you make up about me? What did you make up about life now that you're 23, almost 24 years
Yeah.
old, and the things that you experienced? Like, I want him to share his side of it because my 27-year-old daughter recently told me what she thought, and like it brought me to tears. She's just like, Mom, I see all you did now. I see what happened. I see who dad is. I see, not that they don't love their dad,
Right.
you know, and I've always supported them in doing that. But I
So,
was just like, and I think it's important, but I was just like, I did not ever put him as like the bad guy. There was moments I did. I will admit there was some weakness moments
sure.
that but for the most part, I really just protected them as much as I could. Sorry, daddy's not going to be able to make it tonight. I'll take care, you know, we'll go out for pizza or we'll go to the park and play or whatever. And so there were so many times that different things happened, and I was always the one who I was the glue. And
Right.
so now that I was single and having to be the glue, but also trying to figure out who I was now because I was so young.
Yeah. Yeah.
The dating world, oh gosh, which don't get me started on the dating world. We could go like, I pull Doug aside multiple times still. I'm like, babe, thank you so much for being you, because
Right. Yes.
you have to kiss a couple toads. I swear to goodness, I kissed a
A
few toads,
million. A million.
and I just was like, good God, no. And I remember saying, if I can't honestly think about having this person come into my home or to even meet my children, they're not the person for me. So literally I would go on a date with someone and I feel horrible because it was almost like an interview. Like if I liked you and I wanted to hang out with you as a friend, or if I liked you and I'm like, no,
Yeah.
or well,
Well, you're
Doug's the
also trying to figure out too, like, how do I not attract abusive people in my life, right? Because I went through that too. I'm like, okay, like I'm good. I know I'm a good person. I know I'm worthy. Why am I attracting this personality until I
yeah,
really recognize like I am, attracting my mom's personality subconsciously.
yeah,
And that was really hard to swallow. So I was like, okay, well, that means I have to do more work on myself, right?
yep,
And
exactly.
and that's what you're doing. And then you're playing, not just being the glue, you were playing the masculine and feminine role, which can be extremely tiring, and like, and then you're doing the best that you could, sheltering, not sheltering, sheltering. Like that is like, what do you do? Right. It's like a double-edged sword, but you're doing your best.
Yeah,
But, I think
definitely wearing all the hats,
wearing
like
all that.
wear all the hats. Yep, there you go.
But I also want to point out the relationship that you just briefly touched on with your kids now, that you guys are able to have an open conversation about it and be raw with each other and vulnerable. Like I would give anything, to like have that open conversation, with my mom. I don't know if we'll ever get there, but at the same time, like it's a beautiful thing to be like, yeah, like I'm sorry for that, or like, oh, I didn't see it that way. And it's just an understanding of unconditional love. And I think that is beautiful that you have that relationship with your kids. Like that is such growth, and like it's showing them empowerment too. That's wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's been quite the journey. Through that
Right.
discovery, I I was reminded about my father and his alcoholism. And so it made perfect sense to me why everything was the way it was and why I attracted what I attracted, because it was comfortable. And I think
Right.
I mentioned that before. But then, like you said, after my divorce, I was still attracting these guys. And I was like, well, he's hot and he's this, like, why is this? And why does he have the same, behaviors? It starts off really nice. And I'm like, no, no. And I made a rule, and Doug still laughs about this probably to this day, is I had a 30-day rule. Like I wouldn't sleep with you for 30 days. Even if I liked you, unless it was a one night stand, because we all had those where you're just like, okay, I'm on a mission. I'm going to go do this. Um, right. But for the most part, like if I was dating someone and I wanted to see if they were future potential, I was like, there was a 30-day rule. I was not going to do that just to make sure that they really were more than 3 weeks good, like my ex-husband would be.
I think that's an amazing rule. It's really hard to do that, because, if you're a person that is really passionate and just like, just loves having that
Oh,
closeness with somebody, you know what I
yeah.
mean? But it becomes such a beautiful and more close thing when you wait like that. I mean, sometimes you don't have to, but like at the same time, you're giving yourself permission to be strong, to
He's
look
making
at
funny
people
faces at
and
me now because I said that.
well, because sometimes when we have sex with somebody right in the beginning, it's like this highlight reel, and we totally forget because we made this connection and then everything's out the door, you know?
If it's
And
good.
it's
If
like,
it's good, you made this connection, you're like, "Woo,
yeah,
yeah, oh, well."
yeah. And you just
But if
forget
it's not
about,
good, you're like, "Okay, there's the door. Hit the road, Jack."
yeah, yeah. And then you forget about like the rules that you made for yourself, the list that you made, and that it's just, and then down the line, you're like, oh, yeah. Probably shouldn't have done that. So I think that's great. If it works for you, that's amazing. And then it can work for other people. Like, I mean, it definitely puts you in a different perspective when you're really trying to get to know somebody. And especially, when like, men definitely, want that, of course, because they're horn dogs when they're so young or all the time. I mean, women are too, but you really get to see how a man gets to know you
Right.
when you don't have that part of it in the relationship yet.
Yep.
So that's great. So how did so how long were you working on yourself? And really did you were like, okay, like I love myself, and then Douglas, or Doug, whatever his name is, but is he Douglas or is it Doug?
Well, his family back home calls him Douglas,
Douglas.
but
Okay.
he goes by Doug mostly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of funny because I I did some personal growth work during, the time I was married and then shortly after, specifically with PSI seminars. And
What is that?
it's a personal growth and development. I did, they have a basic course, they have a life success. I did a women's leadership, and then they have pace setters leadership dynamics 1 and 2. And I did all of those. And I can tell about those another time. But basically, I got some foundational stuff of like, okay, I'm worthy. I got to figure this out. What's my intention? And so I had to really like sit sometimes when the kids were gone and the house was so quiet and it was just me. Most of the time I would try to get out of the house because, being alone with your thoughts after being busy with 4 kids and running a business was, a lot.
Yeah.
So sometimes I would just sit there and I'm like, okay, back to this common denominator thing. And I got to the point where I wasn't happy with the results. And my friends thought I was really crazy, but I went on an 18-month hiatus and I decided I wasn't having sex with anybody.
Yeah.
And I didn't plan it to be 18 months. I was just thinking I'm going to take a break. And
Yeah.
it ended up being 18 months of self-discovery,
Right.
of figuring out who I am and letting myself decide that I don't have to always wear the masculine role, and I can be feminine
Mhm.
and being out there, in the dating world and, being in your 30s and how scary it is as a single mom with 4 kids because I'm damaged goods now, so to speak. But I really didn't believe that. I
Right.
just knew that definitely I was going to weed out a lot of
Right.
people when I was ready
Right.
after I discovered who I was going to be and what I wanted to
Right.
attract. And before I could attract anything that I wanted, I had to start becoming who I wanted to be in a
Yeah.
relationship and,
Yes.
and in my life and in my business. And
Yeah.
so I really started just digging deep. And yes, there was hard times, and my girlfriends and I would go out and celebrate and have little pity parties every once in a while to just blow off steam. But then I really knew in my heart of hearts that I just needed to get back to figuring out what was important to me. And so what I did, and I think that everybody can relate to this if you haven't done this already, or if you're looking for the answers of how to find the perfect guy, is before I would write down all the things that I wanted and didn't want in a man,
Mhm.
and my all my non-negotiables. And that's very common. We hear that as a theme, is this is what you do, this is how you find Mr. Right or Mrs. Right, is you write down this list of all the things you want and all the things you don't want.
Mhm.
Well, I found a little trick to it,
Mhm.
I made up a trick. You please use it. Please use it.
Yes, you look for what worked for you, and
Right,
this can help somebody else. Like,
right.
it's all about finding what works for you. I
So the universe doesn't hear, your God, your angels, the universe, however you look at your higher power and the energy that we attract and we create around us, does not respond to negative. So when you put out there, I don't want a guy who's going to cheat on me, guess what you're going to attract? I don't want a guy who drinks too much. Guess what? That's what you're going to attract, because the that energy doesn't understand the negative. So you're still attracting those things.
Mhm. Mhm.
So what I started doing is anytime, and I did this just mentally, I would take like a big whiteboard or a big chalkboard in my head, and every time I would say something negative, I do like a visual, because you think in pictures. And so I would just take close my eyes and take like a chalkboard eraser, and erase that thought, and then I'd recreate that thought how
Oh,
I wanted it.
that's amazing.
And so I would say, I want someone who's loyal and going to love me the
Mm.
way I deserve to be loved. And I want to reciprocate that love. And I would recreate that story or that statement to a positive of what I wanted to attract and who I wanted to become and give back, respectively. And so it was crazy. I remember going, my mom and I used to do half marathons, and that was kind of our bonding time together a while back, before some other stuff happened.
Yeah.
And I told her, I said, Mom, I already know he's there. I already know. I just can't see his face. I can see his silhouette. I know he's there. I
Mhm.
know this man exists. And if he didn't exist, God wouldn't put him in my heart. And God wouldn't be like, I would always use the analogy like God is baking him. He's baking, and he's just not ready yet. The dough's not cooked.
I
It's
understand.
not ready.
Yes.
And
Yes.
now he tells me, no, I was just up in a tree, because he was a hunter from Kentucky, he's from the country and he loves hunting. And
Yeah.
like, oh, I was like, where have you been all my life? He's all up in a tree. And I was like, oh, you're so funny. But I love that about him, that he has a sense
Yeah.
of humor, even though he's got a quirky sense of humor.
Yeah.
It still takes some getting used to when you're, until you really get to know him. But then you're just like, oh, you're just so funny. But
Yeah.
but I remember seeing this silhouette, and I remember what he looked like from the back, and I still I'm like, oh my God, it's him. And so now it's just funny, because I remember telling my mom this story, and I told her all these characteristics of who he was and who I was and how we were together. Like, I already knew. And this was before we started dating, like before we got serious or anything like that. And then I remember after we started dating, and he was in that position of where I was after my divorce. So he wasn't ready, but he wanted to be. And like, so he had his own struggle, so I had to hold space for him. We talk about Sean and Saxony and how they had to hold space, and how valuable that is, because you're not going to change anybody, and you're not going to force them or giving them ultimatum like, you do this, or because then it's not pure.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
It's
so
right.
I decided that I was not going to give him any pressure whatsoever, that you go do what you need to do. I'm always going to be your friend. And we stayed friends.
Yeah.
Right, babe? Yes. You hear him?
Yeah, I do.
He's in his office. He's listening to this whole thing. But I knew that he was my person. After meeting him, like, he had all the characteristics. There were some things that I was just like, okay, I'm not sure about this. I'm not sure about this, but we're dating. It's still
Right.
time. He's the
Right.
only one that I ever brought to break of any guys that I dated in the what gosh, oh, we got divorced in 2009 and him and I didn't even start dating till 2014. He was the first guy in 5 years of being divorced that met my kids. But in fairness, he had already met them before because I knew him and his ex-wife and their kids and everything like
Yeah.
that. It was more comfortable too,
Yeah.
but he's the only one that came around and
Right.
stayed, and we did activities together. I did one time with one other guy and I realized that it was just not.
Yeah.
But so technically the two guys have actually met my children, and
Right.
now I'm married to the second one.
Yeah. I just love that, and I absolutely agree. When you're talking about energy, when you're talking about putting it out there, like you really have to be specific, right? And
Intentional
intentional, specific, and
with yourself and with what you want to attract and what you want to create and what it looks like.
right. And I didn't really realize that until I talked to Dr. D about that, and she was like, if you don't have a list of what you want, I mean, how they
Yep.
smell, even to like what their ear shape is, like weird stuff, like anything that you want, you're not ready. And it wasn't about like writing down what you don't want. It's writing everything that you want, and then when I met Daniel, I was like, oh shit, is this my list? Because when I met him, I was like, oh shit, you're it. You know what I mean? You're it. Like,
Yep.
and there's some things on on that list that weren't, that weren't happening, but it wasn't to say like those things can happen together.
Right.
And when I went home and I read that list, I was literally reading about Daniel and I was like, no way,
Wasn't
like,
it LDL too when Ryan Stewman talked about Amy and how
yeah.
that's how I felt about Doug, and that's how I remember you and I talking and
Yeah.
about that's how you felt about when you like, and then you guys came out about you guys dating. I'm like, it's so crazy what when you're intentional
Yes.
and like it, and you're like, and you even almost like second, and you're like, did I really create did I? And then you're like, well, I must have, because how else is this possible?
Right. And it also takes two people who really love themselves because you can't have
That
that
are ready. Yeah.
if you don't have that. But we were both shocked. And then Daniel had a list too. And, and it was like reading about me. And I was like, oh my God, I didn't know you did that too. But it was so powerful and it was just so neat. And it continues to still, be that way. And the intention, like you said, intention and energy is just, it's more important than we understand. But then we also get to understand energy more, like we get to understand that connection. And when we are more grounded into intention
Yep.
and what our purpose is, it really becomes that new chapter, right? And it just keeps growing and there's more chapters and more chapters. And it's a really cool thing to understand. And it's hard to get there, but when you
It
do,
takes time to get there, but when
is
you get there, and if you're not there yet, for any of your audience that's not there yet, it's possible.
yes,
It is
it's
possible. You
possible.
just have to remember you might be that dough in the oven still baking too. Like, the biscuits aren't done, you know, you,
Biscuits on down, guys. I mean,
right?
yeah, because like I'm like, oh my God, I'm almost 40. I've
Right.
never been married. I don't have kids. I wanted kids, but now I'm just
Right.
like, it's okay. Like God had a different plan for me, and I love kids. I love that Daniel has
Yeah.
kids. I haven't met them yet. And, we're just trying to find like the right time, because that's a big thing for them as well. And
Yeah.
but yeah, I was like, this is never gonna happen. This is never gonna happen for me. And then it's funny how God works because I have Daniel and he's in a different state. But so God has a little bit of humor too.
Oh, God definitely has a sense of humor. There's no question about that. And I think it adds character to the story.
It
uh,
does. I guess I should
Definitely
have.
some excitement, but it's also
Yeah.
one of those things where you really get to truly learn
Mm,
different facets of who someone is and how you behave and respond.
right.
Um, because that's the other thing too, is I remember thinking back of some of the ways that I responded and how I took control and did certain things, which would, like, I couldn't do those things to my husband, nor had already decided I didn't want to do those things because I wanted a man who was going to lead our home. I wanted a man who's going to be, that I could trust, the man that I could cry in front of, because I hate crying, and he is just like literally we had started dating in April. In May, when they gave us the report, or I went to go get the report to find out how far Bethany was, I came home bawling, and he just held me in his arms and told me, it's okay, it's okay, it's going to be okay. And to have that, to feel free enough to be vulnerable
Yes.
and be a woman, and to
Yeah.
share my feelings and emotions. And I was scared to death. I even told him, I was like, you don't want any part of this, because this is hell. Like, this is hard. And
Yeah.
here he is, this many years later, and he's seen and uh, you know dealt with a lot of things with her. And
Yeah.
he had the choice, and I wanted him to be where he's at, just like you want Daniel to be where he's at, and everything to be. And there's never going to be a right time per se, but hey, like, let's have this conversation. Let's talk about these things, and let's express our fears and work through them and be honest and vulnerable so that we can come to solution. And the biggest thing that we know that is true, once you get into that space of synergy,
Mhm.
stuff just happens. You're like, well, how'd that happen? That was amazing.
Right.
Like,
Right.
or this came together, and you're just like, whoa. And
Right.
we actually will talk about that. It's like, okay, if things are going sideways and sideways and sideways, it's like, okay, where are we out of sync? Because somewhere we're out of sync, because when we are both in alignment, or when we're both connected,
Right.
things just happen. Like, our businesses, our
Right.
how our home that we have, our marriage, everything that we've built so far, right, babe?
Kyle tell you the same thing.
Oh yeah, Kyle Beck says the same thing too. Is
Ah,
like when you guys are together, you guys are amazing. I'm like, I know. And it's just because he's my person, and I value him, I honor him. And then when we come together and we bring those two energies together, we're just like unstoppable.
yeah, because you also let him be him and he lets you
Oh
be
gosh.
you. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? It's like Daniel was the first person that I was like, I let him just be his masculine self. I love that. And he lets me be feminine, because I was very masculine in a lot of my relationships because I was protecting myself. I didn't even
Right.
realize that
Yeah.
until like I met Daniel, and I didn't realize that until like we started talking about it at the women's event. I mean, I didn't realize it until right then. And that's right when I met Daniel. It was really strange. You know how that works. And
Yep.
when Daniel and I are together in person, like all these really cool things happen around us. It's really, really cool. And that's why it's extremely hard to be apart too, because it's so hard.
You want more of that.
Yeah, we both do, and we know that someday it is going to come together, and it's really has taken a lot of patience, but at the same time we just know that it works. I know that he's my person, and like he feels the same way about me. And and sometimes he says the same thing, like about your daughter and stuff like that. He's like, yeah, you really want to be in this? And I'm like, oh gosh, yes I do. Is it going to be a huge change for me? Yeah. Am I going to go through some hard times? Yeah, I am, because it's going to be something completely new. Yeah, I'm the oldest of five. Yeah, I have a lot of nieces and nephews, but like being a role model, not talking stepmom, not talking about anything of that. Being a role model for these girls is definitely something that I want to just show them love. But at the same time, it's going to be like it's going to be completely different for me, but I'm excited about it. I'm excited, and he's excited that I'm excited. And that's all that matters. But But yeah, it's definitely, I definitely understand. Like, you never would think that these things are possible until you have it, and it is possible. You're like, it is, it is, it is, it is.
Yeah.
And like, everything has energy and God has our backs. I love that line. I think Amanda Francis says this in her book, Get Rich as Fuck. And she's just like, it's a great book, and she's so positive and all these things that she talks about. But I'm like,
Yeah.
you're right. Energy is in everything and God has our back. So that's why we have to just, let go, ask for what we want. He will give us what we need. And then we just continue and
Yeah.
continue to
And
grow.
what are we going to do with it? And how are
Right.
we going to help manifest God's great works?
Absolutely. And that's why it's okay going back to the beginning of like being kind of like a jack wearing lots of hats, because you guys are being open to receiving what is needed, that you guys both create together. And
Yep.
that is something that is powerful and beautiful. And then your kids get to watch you do that. People are always watching you, no matter if your kids, your family, your audience, your employees, they are watching you, and they want what you have. And it's like, okay, how do we help them?
That's where Dragon Legacy came from, his apparel
Yeah.
company, the name. Um, we threw around names and stuff like that. And I remember when we were dating, I had mentioned about building a legacy for our children and for the future
Oh,
generations to come. And so that, we have that. And I remember saying that almost like in a fairy tale like dream, like this would be great to have a legacy and to do this. And, knowing that it's possible, but it just seems so far-fetched. Like, you see the life that certain people have where they're, flying private jets and they're driving all the cars and doing all the things
sure,
and speaking on all the stages. And
sure.
you're like, oh, it seems so out there. And that's how just even putting that word out there, legacy, felt to me at that time. But I shared it with him, and it almost seemed kind of vulnerable. I almost wanted to take it back when I remember saying it. And it's just so funny that full circle here. Now we're married. Now we're doing these things. And the first thing he says is that his reasoning behind Dragon Legacy Apparel is so that, and the Turo businesses and doing all the things that we're doing, is to show the kids and show others what's possible. Because he shouldn't have never left, Kentucky. If you would have asked all of his friends and family, he should have
Right.
just stayed there and done what people from Louisville, Kentucky do. And that's
Yeah.
just, he's got his own programming going on over there. And he is thinking bigger and says, no, we're going to build a legacy. And I don't know what it's going to look like, but I know that this is the direction we're going. And I was like, oh, that's freaking hot.
Yeah,
So
it is.
sexy.
Yeah, it is. And it's powerful. It's so powerful. And that's the thing. Like, we don't know where it's going, right? But we know that we're making a positive impact. So those little positive impacts, for months, maybe years sometimes, will come together as a really, really big impact. Because people ask me, like, why do you do this podcast? Like, what's in it for you? Like, and I'm like, I mean, not a lot of people ask me that, but I do get asked that. And it's
Yeah,
like,
sure.
well, I don't know where it's going. And that's pretty cool, because I
And
know
that's okay.
it is okay. Because I know that like these little impacts will become big impacts. It's just like I had a client today who remembered our conversation last time about, Daniel with his PTSD and going to ketamine treatments and all these things in my podcast. And she came in today and she's like, my boyfriend has been struggling with alcoholism and PTSD for 2 years. And immediately I was like, I want you to reach out to Jason Williams. He's been sober for 26 years, sober gangster. Reach out to Daniel. And then it's like, when you're doing these things, you create this tribe of, you're building your table of like, okay, talk to this person. And it just becomes a thing. And that's how you see the bigger impact. Because, she came to me for these questions, and she was like, he said he's ready for help. He's been sober for a week. He's ready for help. And I was like, I was crying. She was crying,
I know.
and
Gosh.
you know what I mean? And I
Yes.
was like, this is how we're making an impact. this is what we're doing, because people will say to me, well, you're not, well, maybe one person, but like, you're not a
It
licensed
seems like a
therapist.
lot though. When you
Yeah.
hear it one and then it brings all those old memories and
Yeah.
old, I call them manahoonies, those old voices in your head or
Yeah.
thoughts in your head that tell you you can't, or why the hell are you doing this? Like,
Right.
who the
Right.
F, who the F do you think you are?
That's what I'm
The
saying,
right.
because yeah, like I'm not a licensed therapist. I understand that. But guess what? I can have conversations with people for people to understand that they have a choice, that there's hope, and that things do happen like this,
Mhm.
right? And if they can help this person, then we're all making an impact for this person because, he's a veteran and can't get help. They don't think his problem is real. They don't think it's real, and then he has this
Changes the trajectory of this man's life
right? And then
completely in a positive way, because who knows if he doesn't have the support from you and from the support system that you've
right,
directed him to, which path is he going to go? Like the
right,
fork of the road is clearly there. And when you're standing there and you don't know which way, but you've got these support system that says, here, been here, done that. Let me help you and let
find
me guide you. Let me show you the way. And
yes,
then you're not reinventing the wheel.
right,
You feel almost empowered, like, okay, like a mom that has a baby, they're like, when you're pregnant, you're like, oh my God, how am I going to do this? Well, gosh, think about how many other people before you, had babies. Well, for him, how many people before you have had alcoholism and PTSD and all those things and made something good come out of that? You could be
right.
that next person, and you were a part of the origination of that journey for him.
Yeah.
How
And that's
fucking cool is that?
that would, and it would be, it will be really cool if, he takes it and he reaches out. Like I'm praying, I'm going to be praying for him every day for him to reach out and make that move. Right. Because he also has, she was telling me that he has this agreement of like, from being in the military and from his dad, that if you're vulnerable, you're a fucking pussy. You know what I mean? Sorry for
Yeah,
my,
that story.
for my words, but that is like, and this is what I'm so passionate about, like in my life right now, is that, this whole thing with male suicide happening over and over and over again. It's because that our society is literally shaming our masculine divine man,
Yes.
like they're shaming these people, making them feel like they're not a man because they can't be vulnerable. You know what I mean? And this is like, I mean, this has just happened today. So it got me like so fired up, because it's like,
Yeah.
this is the problem. This is
Yeah.
the problem our society is making. And that's why I was like, that is why I'm doing what I'm doing. This is why Michelle's doing what you're doing. This is why Daniel is doing what you're doing, or Jason or Sean or Saxony. Like, this is why we are doing these things, because we are going to show up because other people won't.
Right.
And so if we can make an impact, that's those little things will turn into a big impact and then more. So like, I love that. I know this went off a tangent, but I just love that, like, your
Keep
husband
shining
was
your
like,
light and be in a lighthouse.
"Wait." I love that your husband just lives like, I don't know where it's going, but I know it's going to be good, because we're passionate, right? If you have that passion in your life, if you know that what you're passionate about, you will be successful in your relationships, being a mom, being a business owner, being, a brother, a sister, whoever that, a wife, a husband, like, you will be successful because you're passionate and you understand energy and you decide.
Yep. And it all starts with deciding. Because if I didn't decide,
Right.
enough was enough. If I didn't decide I wanted something better, if I didn't decide
Right.
to take action
Right.
and get in alignment with myself and my goals and what I wanted, I would have never manifested and created all the things that I have. And I thank God for being patient and holding space for me,
Oh, right.
having grace with me,
Yeah.
because there was times where I didn't have grace with myself, and then I felt guilty, and that vicious cycle, that rabbit hole that we go down, where we're like, oh gosh, who the hell do I think I am?
Right.
There's those dark days, and
Right.
some people have them worse than others. I've had a few of them. I shared one. I had one back in 2016 that was pretty hard. And one of my girlfriends came over and she's like, okay, Michelle, time to get up. You are going to go do this, this is, and she's like, and we're going to get this done. And I was like, she would not let me stay in that pity party spot. And it was probably the best kick in the ass that I needed. And I turned around and ended up having one of my best years in real estate because she kicked my butt. Just that one day, she literally just kicked my butt and I was ready to receive it. It's almost like God sent her to say, okay,
I'm gonna say that.
I'm going to call you out on your bullshit.
Yep.
And here you go. And you said you didn't want to live like this anymore. And so you're not gonna.
Yeah, and
So
guess what? You're going to learn the most coming out of that darkness. You're going to learn the most when you're in that darkness, and I feel like a lot of people like are in the darkness right now. There's a lot of people that
a
are
lot of
really
scary stuff out there right now. And there's a lot of
Mhm.
hype that is almost making it magnified to where
Right,
it feels even bigger than it really is. Not saying that it's not big,
right.
but just saying that there's definitely um, a lot that can be done in
Hmm.
our own homes and households.
Hmm.
Sean always says to have your house in order. There's so many things that we can be doing, starting with ourselves and then and our households, and then working out from there into our community, into our sphere, the people that are around us so that we can
Yes.
help collectively just grow
Right.
and share the gifts from God that we've been
Yes.
given.
Yes. I mean, exactly right. I mean, even when Sean was talking this week about the pressure that is, it's like it's kind of scary pressure. Jeremy Finley wrote a post a couple days ago on Facebook literally about the same thing, and I reached out to Sean today. I was like, dude, like everyone is feeling this pressure right now that has their light shining. It's like God is like really, making us strong and like really think outside of the box. But this is why we are here.
And we're
This is
being
why
tested.
we're
We're
being tested
we
big
are
time,
being tested.
big time. And, because some days I'm like, I've never been so stressed out in my life these last 2 weeks. It's good stuff, but it's like the pressure of like, you know, getting uncomfortable, right? It's so uncomfortable right now. There's so many things that are so uncomfortable, but we have to get uncomfortable to shine our light even more. We have to do these things to push even more, to show up for ourselves so other people can show up for themselves by watching what we're doing and shining our light and making sure like it is going to be okay. It's uncomfortable as shit right now, but it is going to be okay as long as we keep hold, steady in our household to like, outside our house, like just like you were saying, like build your table right now, get your house in order and keep shining your light to help because there is so much sadness in this world. That's where that's that pressure I feel. It's like it's just getting heavier and heavier and heavier and you're just like fuck, it's like I want to help as many people as I can. Same with you. And I'm so glad that we have this table of people that are doing the same things and are also feeling the same things, you know
Right.
and just what you and Doug are doing with your dragon legacy. I mean, you're pushing that envelope that we are going to survive.
Yep.
Beautiful.
Well, you think about it too. What did our grandparents go through
Right.
and their
Right.
grandparents? Like everybody always, there's constant cycles of pressure and testing of faith and, you know, the generational, situations that we all are experiencing right now
Oh,
that are just so crazy, just and then the mindset and the maturity. So I know that there's some people out there that are really struggling and maybe someone's a real jerk and they cut you off on the road or whatever, but maybe just say a quick prayer for them because you don't know what they went through. I just went to one of my listings that sold really quickly, which was great. And I was going over there and I saw, someone taking camera pictures and I didn't think anything of it. The night before was a storm and there was a car accident.
mm,
4 teenagers were in the car and 3 of them died right by her house, right in, the entrance to the neighborhood of where her house is.
mhm.
And I'm just like, gosh, tomorrow's not promised.
No.
And those families thought that their daughters or their kids or whatever, I didn't look too much into the story. She sent me the story after we discussed it briefly. And it just so happens that it kind of triggered me because, it's so easy to think that we have plenty of time
Right.
and that and our kids are always going to be here. Like, what if, not trying to be morbid or anything, but what if today was our last day? What if today is the last day for our children? What if it's the last day for our niece or our nephew or our spouse or whatever? Like,
Right.
not to be morbid, but like, are we giving them everything we can? Are we helping them? Are we loving them? Are we supporting them? Are we being our best self to them? Okay. Like, seriously, that just really needs to be the forefront of our mind. And I know that my kids, I've trained them from a little bit. So I'm eager to see what my son says, because my daughter already told me. She reminds me, she's like, Mom, you would always tell me that if I was in a funk that I got 10 minutes, get it out of my system, stomp my feet and throw my fit and, bitch and moan and complain, and then go out there and freaking do what needs to be done.
Mm. Yeah.
And like, we as a society need to take a look at like how precious life is and go, okay, I'm pissed off that the world's doing this and this isn't working out how I want, and the economy and the interest rates and the banking collapsing and all this
Yeah.
bullshit. Like,
Okay.
really?
Right.
So what?
E- Exactly.
So what?
It's not
There
morbid.
are
It's not
people
morbid.
near us that need help, and we
Yes.
are promised that they're going to be here tomorrow, and neither are we. So
Right.
let's freaking make the most of it now. And whatever's going to happen, God has already got the plan. So
Yep.
let's just do our part
Exactly.
and
Exactly.
thank Him for the blessings that we are able to be here to do it.
Absolutely. And it's not morbid. It's like those thoughts are going to put you in a different perspective of like, why hate, why argue, like, of course that stuff happens, but just love, yeah, there's all this noise around going on with the country and the government and the banks. Like, you're right. It's like, fuck that noise. Like,
Yeah.
concentrate on what's right in front of you. Even if that's looking at yourself in the mirror and being like, you got this, you're strong, you're beautiful, you're powerful, right?
Yeah.
Nothing is going to change the way I feel about myself, how I feel about my children, how I feel about my family and what I'm doing, because I'm going to put love first. And it's like, sometimes it's the hardest thing for us to recognize, because there's so much noise, there's so much noise. And it's
Yeah.
just like the chainsaw that Sean talked about, like at
Yeah.
our session.
Oh yeah, it was going off, and yeah.
Yeah, it's just kind of like, you got to remember what your purpose is and to keep leading, being a leader. And
Hence our shameless plug that our bestseller of our clothing line for Dragon Legacy Apparel is Kill the Noise.
I love that. I
Kill the
love
noise.
I love that shirt you have, because it is so true when you really think about killing the noise. You're not letting anything distract you. You're not letting like the dream of the planet, which, Miguel Ruiz talks a lot about in his books, like Four Agreements, Mastery of Love, Mastery of Self,
Yep.
because all these people are in a fog and you're just trying to blow it away and kill that noise.
Yep.
To remember, like, you're so unique, you're so beautiful, you're so unique to this world. And like, you get to decide like what you want to do with that. And promoting love and killing that noise is something to really be proud of, like what you're doing, Michelle, and what we're trying to do. And we just got to keep on keeping it happy.
Yeah. I love how Ed Milet talks about, his future self, what is,
Yeah.
and when he goes to heaven and looks back and, sees the who he should be versus or could have been versus who he became, and he wants to make sure that he's that person that God intended him to be and gave his gift. And like, that's my thing is if we have that gift, whatever your gift is, we each have our own gifts, and we don't have just one gift,
Mhm.
but we have multiple gifts that are given to us, that if we are not giving our gifts out and sharing our gift to the world,
Yeah,
then we're doing a disservice, to ourselves and to God.
100%. That is really well said. If you guys don't know who Ed Milet is, follow him right now.
Oh my gosh.
That
Yeah.
man, I hope to sit next to someday and have a conversation.
Oh, absolutely. I
It's not
will.
recorded. I just like, I want to be in his presence someday. That is like a goal of mine. And because he's just, I mean, he's dynamite. He is
He's
such a light.
and he wasn't always that person. So he realized his gift, and he
Decided.
used it and decided, and he's the first to say it, and it just resonates with me so deeply that, like, okay, when I'm in my funk, when I'm, I call it, I'm in my shit,
Yep.
'cause all I can see is, like, past my own, like, self, just, oh my gosh, just really breaking through and going, okay, enough of that. Now let's get back to work, because there's a bigger mission here.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. This was an amazing conversation. I love how it went all over the place. Like I was telling Michelle before this episode started, like I don't write anything down. Like whatever needs to be said, talked about is what you guys need to hear. And we're being raw and vulnerable with you. And the biggest point is in this conversation is deciding. And if there's anything that you want to say to the end of this, of how do you get your mindset right of knowing that you get to decide, Michelle?
Oh, I think um, I think that it's really easy to get distracted by the noise, right? And we went to Justin Wagner's event in December, and it was such a blessing, because his 8-year-old son Luke, well, now he's 9, but he came. He came. Tell her how we got there. Oh, no, that's a different story. She's trying to wrap this up, babe. But um, you know, would your 8-year-old self be proud of you?
Hmm.
And if not, use that as your check-in
Mhm.
for where you're going and what you're wanting to create and achieve.
Mhm.
Um, there's so many things. There's such a purity about children,
Mm.
and the honesty and the love, and they don't have all that programming that bogs them down to the level of an adult yet, thank goodness, in most cases. um, they haven't usually been traumatized too much, hopefully. There definitely is, those cases as well, but would your 8-year-old self be proud of you?
Mm.
And if not, what are you going to do about it,
Mm.
so that you can use the gifts that God has given you?
Mhm. Oh, that's beautiful. That's so beautiful. And I hope you guys really take that to heart and utilize that, and like I said, you guys get to decide
Yep.
and just know that God,
Moment by moment.
yeah, God will
Sometimes
have
it's
your back.
moment by moment.
It
You
is.
can have those moments where you're just like, I'm just gonna
It,
burn this shit down. And Doug's heard me say it. I'm like, I was in a
yeah,
dark minute driving in the car. I was really ready to burn it all down. And then,
that's
you
okay. You
just
might
go,
have to
okay,
burn everything down for it to grow greener. That I mean, Jen Solomon
maybe.
said it right, the other day. She's like, I burned everything down and now it's growing greener
Sometimes
than
it's
ever.
appropriate.
Yep.
Sometimes it's appropriate. But
Yep.
is your 8-year-old self going to be proud of you?
Right.
And if not, what are you going to do? Because if I stayed in that marriage, instead of burning it all down to the ground and starting all over, I would not be living my best life with the amazing husband that I have now. Would not have went through all that self-discovery. I mean, I would have stayed probably miserably married, and just, I wouldn't be who I am today.
No, you
I
wouldn't.
wouldn't be that best self, that if today was my final day and I went to go meet God, and he said, you did everything, I wouldn't be
Yeah.
me. I wouldn't be Michele Robbins that I am today.
Yeah. I love it, Michelle. I'm so proud of like what you guys are doing and who you are today. And I just love seeing all the things that you're doing on social media. And if you guys are interested in contacting her, of course, she is on Facebook and Instagram. Look her up. It will be in the description box that you can, see her profile link. And if you have questions for her, reach out. I mean, she's
Yeah.
a person that will listen and give you some feedback or whatever advice that she gives you, So Michelle, thank you so much for
Thank
celebrating
you.
St.
Thank you for
Patrick's Day.
having me. Hey, this is where the party's at. I don't
This
need to
is
drink
where the
green
party's
beer for
at.
this. This
Yeah,
is way more fun.
way more fun, way more fun.
Thank
Way
you
more
for having me. I appreciate you. I'm so blessed and grateful because I remember us following each other way before we even met in real life in October at the women's,
That's right.
event.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah. So
I'm
I mean,
so grateful. I'm
yeah, I'm
so
so
grateful to
grateful.
have women, powerful women, and amazing humans
Yeah.
in my life like you. So
Yeah.
thank you for shining your light and keep doing it. I just appreciate you so much.
Oh, I feel the same. I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful for your light. And I hope we get to see each other again soon.
I know. I'm waiting. I messaged Jen saying, "Hey, when's the next, flying?" Because I just love those small intimacy, and I know my
Yeah.
husband would too. So, and
Yeah.
I would love to see you.
Yeah.
Hug
We're
your neck.
going to we're going to the March one next well, that's next week. So, but I'm sure Daniel and I'll be at other ones because that's where it's at. I freaking love those. I mean, it's just and it's always like, I'm always so thankful that it's like, oh, I really need to go. I really need to be here.
You're like, Sean, don't rip my new asshole for me.
I know, but it's, that's what he
A
does.
blessing.
That's it's growth, right? So, but thank you so much, Michelle. And I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Thank you to everyone listening to our episode. I know it was kind of long, but like we got fiery. We got fiery up in here. We're passionate because we
Yes.
love you. We love you. We love you. Love you. So any questions other than that, feel free to comment, subscribe, share whatever you need to do. We are here for you and we love you. You are so beautiful. So thanks again,
Keep
Michelle.
sharing your gift.
How do I, what am I doing?
Now, how do I do this?
Bleepers. I mean,
Bloopers.
Bye, guys.